More details about the missiles that Russia used to strike Ukraine during the latest massive attack. These fresh batches of missiles contain a significant proportion of Western components. There may be parts from both 2025 and 2026 production years. Vladislav Vlasuk, advisor and presidential commissioner on sanctions policy, reported this in a conversation with journalists. In other words, the joint efforts aimed at blocking the supply of components to Russia are still insufficient, he added. But there are also some positive developments. In particular, over the past year, the United States has recorded more than 10 cases where they managed to detect and stop supply channels for components worth millions of dollars. Ukraine is also cooperating with other manufacturers of components that end up in deadly Russian weapons by circumventing sanctions. Kyiv has developed a mechanism for transferring samples from discovered Russian weapons to manufacturers for analysis. Components are regularly sent to partners in Europe and the United States, and this is having an effect. For example, as a result of this, the number of Western components found in Shaheds is decreasing, but the share of Chinese parts is increasing. As for missiles, it is still too early to talk about significant changes, but according to Vlasyuk, there is nevertheless an impression that Russia does not have stable access to the full range of components it needs. This is also confirmed by certain intelligence data. This massive shelling occurred after the so-called truce on May 9th. The Russians were afraid for their parade, but as we can see, they simply used the time, as always, to stockpile weapons. And the date of the strike was chosen for when American and Chinese leaders were meeting in Beijing. Analysts suggest that this was deliberate to demonstrate that Russia is not as helpless as it appeared during the parade. Russia's deadly attack on Kyiv could undermine the peace process. President of the United States Donald Trump said this to journalists while returning from China and added that he discussed it with Xi Jinping. They discussed it and both agreed that they want a cessation of hostilities. As for the agreements themselves in Beijing, there were fantastic trade deals and similar views on Iran. That's how Donald Trump described them and called these 2 days of negotiations very successful. They said that they discussed the most important issues, agreed that Iran should not have nuclear weapons, the conflict should be ended, maritime straits must remain open, and oil trade should be free. Beijing stated that the meeting contributed to global stability. It is known that the issue of the war in Ukraine was also discussed, but there were no loud statements on this matter. For now, Xi Jinping gave Trump a tour of a rare part of his residence, a garden with centuries-old trees. The US president immediately asked which other world leaders Xi had brought there, and he got the answer: Putin. By the way, the Russian dictator hastily prepared to go to China. He may fly in for a one-day visit as early as next week. Meanwhile, Trump called the Chinese leader his friend.
We discussed the issue of Iran. Our views on how we want to resolve this situation are very similar. We do not want them to have nuclear weapons. We want the straits to remain open, and we have solved many different problems that other people would not have been able to solve. So our relationship is very strong. At present, we have established new relations between our two countries, constructive and strategic. This visit can be called a landmark event, and we have reached significant understanding regarding the outcomes of our cooperation.
7 people were injured in the Odesa district this morning. The enemy used ballistic missiles to attack the port infrastructure of Pivdeni. There were strikes on civilian and transport infrastructure objects. And at night, 2 more civilians were injured in the region and critical infrastructure was damaged. Fires broke out after the strike. The occupiers are staging safaris on civilian cars in Dnipropetrovsk region. There are 2 people injured there. In the Sinelnikov district, after strikes by loitering munitions, rescuers had to contain large-scale fires. In the morning, the Russians struck a car in Kherson with a Molniya kamikaze drone. 4 people were injured. Another city resident was hurt by an enemy drone at night. And 2 people were killed, and 12 others were injured the day before. In Kherson, the suburbs once again endured relentless drone attacks. An apartment building, 7 private houses, a shop, a gas pipeline, and vehicles were damaged. A woman and her 13-year-old daughter are receiving medical assistance after a Russian attack in the Chernihiv region. In the morning, the Russians struck their village. The family's home caught fire. The mother and daughter were hospitalized. In the evening, the Russians struck Kharkiv. There is information about 1 injured person, and throughout the day, the occupiers have been terrorizing Zaporizhzhia with drones. By evening, the regional center was once again shaken and continues to endure attacks. Russian terrorists targeted an industrial facility, but hit a residential area instead. At the moment, 3 people are known to have been injured. More details will be provided by TSN correspondent Daria Nazarova. She is live with us now. Dasha, how are you right now? What is known about the consequences of the shelling at this hour? Hello, hello. The Russians launched the Shahedi around the city at around 6 in the evening. One of them hit an industrial facility, causing a fire to break out there. Initially, there were no casualties, but later a second drone hit a private sector. You can see the consequences of this attack. Here, the houses are mangled. As of now, it is known that 3 people have been injured. They are under medical supervision. Currently, rescuers and utility services are working here. A commission is collecting statements from people whose homes have been damaged. It is known that at least 2 houses cannot be restored. And in the morning, the regional center was attacked by the enemy with 2 Lancets. As a result of the strike, tanks caught fire. Rescuers worked under the threat of repeated strikes. They fought the fire all day long. And only in the evening were they able to contain the flames. A man died there and 3 more people were injured. They are in serious condition in the hospital. For more about this attack, I suggest watching our report. Thick black smoke that can be seen even in the distant districts of Zaporizhzhia. Early in the morning, the Russians attacked the regional center with a Shahed drone. The Fortetsky neighborhood came under enemy strike. As we can see, the tanks are still burning here. Rescuers are trying to contain the flames. As a result of the attack, 1 person was killed and 3 others were injured. They are in the hospital, where rescuers have almost managed to extinguish the fire when enemy drones appear in the sky again. While the air raid siren hasn't sounded yet, Mr. Serhiy, with the help of the rescuers, is trying to pull the surviving tank away from the fire. Well,
what can I tell you? It's my barrel. I need it. Well, it's my job, and that's my barrel. I had to take it away, but it's scary, really scary.
Mr. Alexander was in his garage at the moment of the shelling. He says that when he heard the buzzing, it was already too late to hide.
At the shore, the bomb started flying. I barely managed to hide in the pit. I crawled under the car into the inspection pit. At first, there was no reaction, none at all, and then you start to go into shock.
At least 3 tanks burned out completely. The blast wave damaged the building and the cars parked nearby. The owner of the company who arrived at the scene says the losses are enormous, but now is not the time to give up.
What will we do next? We will continue to keep working hard for our ultimate victory.
Doctors assess the condition of the 2 wounded as serious and are doing everything they can to save their lives. Daria Nazarova, Andrei Hupovka, Zaporizhzhia, TSN, 1+ Marathon, United News. 3 key threats and the responses to them. Volodymyr Zelensky held an urgent meeting with the heads of the defense and security forces. The topic of the meeting, long-range sanctions against the aggressor and new plans. The enemy struck at the center of Kyiv. Ukraine is preparing new targets for strikes against Russian oil industry and military facilities. The president assured that no attack on our cities will go unanswered. The second issue is the threat from Belarus. Intelligence has recorded new attempts by the Kremlin to drag Lukashenko into the war. According to Kyiv, Russia is considering plans for offensives from Belarusian territory, either again towards Chernihiv region and Kyiv or against one of the NATO countries. Our defense forces are already strengthening the northern border, and the response plan will be approved at the headquarters. In addition, the main intelligence directorate has intercepted documents from the occupiers regarding preparations for new massive missile and drone strikes. This time, the enemy is targeting nearly 24 so-called decision-making centers. These are political and military facilities. In the footage with coordinates, it is easy to recognize the building of the president's office in the center of Kyiv and Zelensky's country residence. Here is what the president of Ukraine had to say about this.
They have been nurturing this plan for a long time. Now, after Iran, they have become active again, trying to find out where we are, where we go. And the same goes for other people from the Ukrainian leadership, from intelligence, from our special services. Some people there in Moscow still haven't understood that Ukrainians will never give up their independence under any circumstances, whether on Bankova or elsewhere, their land, their sovereignty, their state. We will not surrender.
Russian occupiers have been defeated near the village of Odradne in the Kharkiv region. Fighters of the 129th Separate Heavy Mechanized Brigade cleared and returned the village and its surroundings to full Ukrainian control. During the operation, the Russian occupiers suffered losses. Those who managed to escape fled toward Russia. In total, over the past day, the defense forces repelled 257 Russian attacks. According to the General Staff, the occupiers carried out the most assaults in the Pokrovsk direction. The Kostiantinivka and Holivka sections of the front also remain difficult. Today, Russian Ryazan is shrouded in smoke and fire. One of the largest oil refineries in the terrorist country is burning there. This was an attack by Ukrainian drones, and it seems that not a single resident of the city was left indifferent. At least that's what a selection of videos from the drone systems forces suggests. Together with Special Operations Forces, intelligence, and other components of the Ukrainian military, they successfully struck the Ryazan oil refinery. This Rosneft property is one of the 5 largest plants in Russia. Its design capacity is about 17 million tons of oil per year. Diesel, jet fuel, and other products. Every year, more than 840,000 tons of aviation gas are produced here, which is used by the occupiers' aerospace forces. No one knows exactly what was burning over the refinery district, but the fire was like that. The blaze was so intense that locals in Ryazan filmed it from a dozen different angles. They didn't hide their amazement at another spectacle, large black spots that covered cars throughout the region. These are already the consequences of the fire, after which rain of burnt petroleum products began to fall on the city. Photos and videos of 2 damaged apartment buildings also appeared in Russian social media groups. According to local authorities, 3 people were killed and 12 were injured, and the residents of these buildings were evacuated.
Oh, how sweet it is.
Putin has received his ticket to The Hague. At the Council of Europe meeting in Chisinau, a key decision was approved to launch a special tribunal for the crime of Russian aggression. As reported by the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the European Union and 36 countries around the world have agreed to approve an expanded partial agreement. This is an international treaty that establishes the governing committee of the Special Tribunal. As Ukraine's chief diplomat noted today, Putin and the entire Russian leadership have received their ticket to The Hague. Andriy Sybiha emphasized that the Special Tribunal became a legal reality just 1 year after it was approved in Lviv. The implementation agreement, and this is a record speed for international criminal justice. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine emphasizes that this is only the beginning on the path to justice. More countries will be able to join the Special Tribunal later, both members of the Council of Europe and third countries. More for the future tribunal. They have already found a location for the initial so-called skeletal phase in the international zone of The Hague for Putin. This was reported by the Director General for European Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, Helen Baker. Although it will be announced later,